Hello, and welcome to week 5 in our course, 5 weeks in our 15-week semester. This week is one that I've really been looking forward to. We're going to be focused in on talking about and learning about our personal connection to nature. And I think this topic is really important because many of us, we've been talking about children and their connection to nature and how we build that. But this week is really focused in on our own selves. And I think that, just the analogy that I used in the notes for this week was like if you were taking a drawing course in college, there would be an expectation that you draw. So our thinking, or my thinking, is that this week and for the remainder of the semester, we're going to be doing some little activities each week that build our own personal nature connection. So I hopefully you found the link and you can download this. You can print a paper copy of it, or you can just use it digitally. This is I want to say it's a first draft. When I was just looking at it before recording, I was like, oh, I see a couple of typos, but I hope that you'll forgive that. This is a project that I've been wanting to work on for a long time, and this course is the perfect time to make it happen. So this week you are reading the first 14 pages in it, called Cultivating Your Nature Connection, a Handbook for Educators. You'll see there is a table of contents in what you're reading. I'm going to probably shift things around a little bit. Like I said, this is a first draft of the document, but I think it's really important to think about what are those things that we do to build our own personal nature connection. And, this doesn't have to be lofty things like traveling to way far away places or, going to, see national parks or exotic places around the world, but rather just within our own backyard or our nearby park. What are those things that we could be doing on a daily or at least weekly basis to help us to feel connected to nature? And so this handbook is going to, I want you to read the 14 pages, the first 14 pages. It really gives you a foundation of what we're going to be doing with it. And it's going to be tied into our project that's going to be due, I believe it's in week 14, but it's about developing your own, carving out time in your own day or within your own week to find your nature connection. So I encourage you to, definitely read those pages. Print it out probably is a good idea. You're not going to need any like really particular supplies or anything, but it is a good idea to have a nature journal, and that could just be, printing out the copies of what I've created and maybe adding some blank pages that you could use for your own reflections. And then think about how could you carve out a little bit of time. And so I think that this is probably, it's just part of your coursework in this semester. So thinking of you, kind of using this as a time to sort of maybe jumpstart your nature connection if you don't already have one. And you want to this week kind of think about what are those nearby nature areas that I could go to go for a walk or go to do an observation or listen to birds, things like that. Hopefully you can think of maybe 3 different places. If you're not really that familiar with um, your own area, ask people that might be more familiar with those places, because it's great when we don't have to travel somewhere far. We want to go to those places within our own backyard. Um, and then also in the journal, you'll see there are places for you to, there's places that have prompts that you can write your own notes in. This isn't something that you're not going to have to turn in the document or anything like that. It's just to sort of prompt your thinking. And I think reflective practice is such a great practice for educators to use both within our personal lives and our professional lives. When we reflect, it gives us that time to really pause and think about the things that are working, and thinking about how maybe you could do things differently. So the first 14 pages will kind of sort of set the course of this project for the rest of the semester. It's going to talk about some different paths that you might lead you into nature. I I didn't want to go on and on and on in those first few pages because there's lots of different paths into becoming connected to nature. And so certainly not limited just to the ideas that I've put in there. But as we go through this document each week, it will be tied directly into the course materials, and just be thinking about how you can implement this in your own life. And I definitely love to hear your feedback, what you think about it, or other ideas. So you're gonna, yeah, definitely give me your feedback about that. The other thing that I wanted to just sort of talk about today briefly, it's beautiful. And it's like, you can see this is not a fake backdrop. This is like real live fall action happening in my own backyard. What a beautiful day to be outside for my own self or with children. And teaching in a nature-based program, you know, these kinds of days are easy. These are those days where you're like, oh, we don't need, it's relatively mild. We certainly don't need jackets, maybe a light sweater early in the morning. There's not a lot of preparation. Children and adults both feel comfortable outside. These are those easy days. But are all the days easy like this? If you're teaching year round in an outdoor program, definitely not. And so as we think about building our own personal nature connection and our own environmental identity, is to begin to unpack what we hold as beliefs about when we go outside and how we can be comfortable outside. And so we did it in the course material this week. We didn't really go into that, but I am going to carve out some time in one of the modules to talk about winter weather or inclement weather in general. How do we get comfortable in, when it's not a lovely, mid 60s and pleasant day? How do we get comfortable? And so just in our upbringing and thinking about our own experiences in nature, our views of what good weather and bad weather is, um, many of us, or I just think about even like on the news programs, it's like, oh, it's a horrible day out there. And, just the way that we perceive different types of weather. And so thinking about how it's important for us to um, develop our own connection to nature so that even on those days where it is harder, and I do love the quote, no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. But learning how to dress for the elements, how to layer our clothes, how to help children, support children in that too. But a lot of it comes down to our own mindset. And there's a woodpecker that, I don't know, not happy that I'm sitting on the deck apparently. Um, get distracted by the birds. But really thinking about how do we find comfort our own self outside in nature. And so this is really important, especially if you're working, maybe you are excited about this approach, but maybe your co-teacher's not. Maybe your co-teacher gets cold really easily. Maybe your co-teacher never really learned how to dress in layers and how to feel comfortable outside. And so we're going to unpack that in a future module, but I think it's important that we're thinking about it, and that we know that some days are easier than others. They feel easier. Some days, I loved in our discussion forum last week when we're talking about different activities, like there's so many wonderful activities that we can use with natural loose parts or natural materials. And, the leaves and the fall just bring us all kinds of abundance of natural materials. But it's not always that way. And so how do we manage when it's wintertime, when it's really cold, when, we're outside and kids' dexterity because of their gloves, their fine motor skills is really limited because they've got mittens on. And, for children, our wobblers, the ones just starting to walk, how do we help them to feel comfortable when they can, they've got all their winter gear on and they can barely move? So we'll touch on that in a future module. But this week, I definitely want you to dive into that resource that I created for you. If you have questions about it, I encourage you to ask questions. I really enjoyed reading your reflections about the developmental domains and how nature-based approaches support that. I just, reading them, it's like a reminder to my own self of like, yes, this is really important work. And so that's the content for this week. You will be in the discussion forum. The focus in that is going to be actually trying out, or thinking about simple outdoor activities that you can do. You're going to share one simple outdoor activity that you've either tried or you plan on trying. And this is just sort of to inspire each other of ways that we can find those, simple, uh, but really powerful opportunities to connect to nature. And then in your written reflection, you definitely want to have read the handbook before you dive into the written reflection number 5. But this is going to really be, an essay, a personal exploration and self discovery. You don't need to have a citation or a reference this week. It's more of an opinion piece. You can use the prompts in the handbook if you want to, but I think it's important that we, start to digest this a bit and think about, where reflect on the importance of your own connection to nature. And it's totally fine if this is all new to you. There's not an expectation that you're an expert in this, but rather thinking about how does this go from just, academic knowledge or things that we've read about in books to really personal connections. And when we bond, when we have those experiences our own selves. Okay. So thanks so much for all the hard work that you're doing in the course. As always, if you have questions or concerns or comments, definitely send me an email. That's the most direct way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'll see you in the discussion forum. And thanks so much for all the great work you're putting in this semester. Bye for now.